One of the most talked about films at this year's Sundance Festival was Garden State. Joining me now is Zach Braff. He is the star of NBC's Scrubs. He also wrote, directed, and stars in Garden State. Here is a look at the trailer. In addition to Zach, joining me now, Peter Sarsgaard and Natalie Portman. I'm pleased to have all of them here for this rather fascinating movie. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
You got to feel great about this.
I do. I feel very happy to be sitting at your round table right here.
Oh, really?
Well, it's fun. I mean, I never imagined so many of these things were going to happen, and it's one thing to be on some of the talk shows, but I watch your show, and it's I think for all three of us, it's quite an honor to be asked to come to do your show. So thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Well, I like the movie, and I'm fascinated by how everybody's making comparisons to all kinds of other movies in terms of The Graduate, and every generation has its movie. Did you see it that way at all?
The first thing I see when people say that is, it's not that good.
Yeah.
I think, whenever you make a movie about being a 20-something and trying to speak to people your age, there can't help but be comparisons to the greatest films that have ever accomplished that, like Harold and Maude and The Graduate. And more so Harold and Maude, I always look to it as one of my favorite films of all time. So I think there's a couple times in the movie I do a nod to it.
And in fact, you gave her a copy of that, or at least you
I did. I wanted Natalie to see it.
See it.
I want her to see it because I thought, Ruth Gordon's performance in there, I think, is one of the best performances I've ever seen in my life, and I thought it would be a nice inspiration for Natalie to see it.
What was about that movie that made it so impressionable for you?
I don't know. I think I saw it. My father always introduced me to films that I wouldn't necessarily have seen as a normal teenager. He was always trying, whenever we wanted to go rent, some teen movie like 16 Candles for the 10th time, he was always pushing these classics on us, which now I appreciate. And that was when I saw it at a very young age, and I remember, no one else I had seen it, no one else my age had seen it, and it stuck with me. There was something about his alienation, and I think I was feeling some of that as a child.
Now, one article I read about you, it said, here's a guy who feels on top of the world. Cocky and lots of other stuff. You remember this article? And then it said, except for one thing, that you were genuinely surprised that she accepted your invitation to participate in this.
I was. I really, I made, when you're writing a movie, you can't help but daydream about who are going to be the stars of your movie. And when I first met the producers, Danny DeVito and the people at Jersey Films, I said, I'm looking for someone like a Natalie Portman, someone like a Peter Sarsgaard, and someone like Ian Holm.
Yeah.
And we never entertained.
Because of course we can't afford them. And
no, we can't afford them, and they're never going to do it. And if we're lucky, maybe
the first time I've made a movie.
Of course, it didn't seem logical that any of them would say yes. It didn't. But one by one they all.
So why did you say yes?
I was so excited by the character reading it. I think when you read a script and you're compelled to start saying the lines out loud while you're reading it, you sort of know it's something you're dying to do and really excited to do, and will be, stimulated by continuously throughout filming. And that was my experience reading it. I was like, I never had the opportunity to play this.
Yeah, and you joked about the fact that he says he was always looking for Natalie Portman, but you know that there were 7 other actresses that turned it down.
Well, we've had a little squabble over this because
that's what I'm trying to straighten this out.
Zach says that he's wrote the part for me, which we've established that there's a distinction between that I was his choice for the movie, but he didn't write this for me.
Did you write it with her in mind or not?
No, I didn't sit down and go, let me write a vehicle for Natalie Portman. But because I didn't know, to be honest with you, I didn't know what the characters were. The way I wrote this film was just really like free writing. I really just wrote like stream of consciousness and found the movie while I was writing. I didn't sit down and go, I'm going to make a movie about this. So when this girl began to form, who became Sam, and I started to get a sense of who she was, that's when I started, you're sitting there at your table and you procrastinate and just sit there and go, all right, who would be Mark? Who would be Sam? And that's when I first thought of Natalie.
So tell me the idea for the film, and then let's introduce the 2 characters, and then we'll see something here.
The idea for the film was that a guy who's been estranged from his family for about 10 years finally has to come home. He has no choice. He has to come home for his mother's funeral. And he comes home and is reunited with his family and then some of the friends that he left behind. And while home for 4 days, he goes on this like Wizard of Oz like journey through suburbia, and along the way meets a young girl played by Natalie.
In the waiting room.
In the waiting room of a neurologist's office.
Before we go to her character,
the best place to meet chicks, in the waiting room of a neurologist's office.
Here, a couple of things I want to talk. You have been thinking about this kind of movie for a while, or not?
Oh yeah.
And thinking of, you see something and write it in your notebook, this is a great scene, or this is a great idea, or this.
When I was growing up, I was never disciplined enough to keep a journal per se every day and write it in. But I would just write down notes, things that made me laugh. I would just sort of write it on a napkin or a matchbook. And by the time I went to film school, I had this box of just scraps of ideas and things, and that was the jumping off point for what the movie would eventually become.
I know that happens to me. I will never direct a movie or want to direct a movie, but you'll think of scenes in your life. And you'll say, this would be a great scene. Just something happens.
And sometimes they're too surreal to put in a film. People wouldn't think they were real. And in fact, some of the more outlandish scenes in the movie, people are sure aren't real, and they are based in truth.
There's a moment. Let's take a look at this scene. But tell me the significance of the fact that she takes off the headphones, puts them on for you to listen to the music she's listening to.
Well, I think sharing music is a very romantic thing to do. And he's very introverted, and she's...
not.
And she's just eccentric, and he's sort of awakening from this coma he's in, and she's just this
medicated coma.
Yeah, and she has this energy, and she's so excited, and she's passionate about life, and she has the courage to just come over and give him music, and I think it's just a really flirtatious and romantic gesture.
Roll tape. Here it is. Significance also, it is said by some, is that the music you introduce creates what?
A connection
with the audience. The music itself.
Well, yeah, I think so.
Not just the idea.
Yeah, I think that it's a really meaningful and beautiful song, and I thought that that the audience would also be taken in by it. And she says, the last thing she says is, "You got to hear this song; it'll change your life." And in fact, she goes on to change his life.
Who's your character?
My character.
Yes, who's your character?
My character's a grave digger who lives at home with his mother and smokes pot. I wasn't attracted to the movie because of the role necessarily.
It was too.
No, I was attracted to the movie because of kind of the way it was written. I'd never really read anything that was written that way. That we're on a journey. You have no idea what the journey is. Yeah. We go to all these sort of, it's like an odyssey. We're going to all these different places and doing all these different things. You don't know what's going to add up to, but somehow you're compelled to read it. And
you finished reading the script and you said?
I said yes, immediately. Yeah. The ones that you ponder over for a long time are the ones that usually weren't worth doing.
Yeah. So if you instinctively know, go for it.
And I knew it would be fun. I mean, first-time directors are a lot of things, but they're never boring.
They can be bad, they can be good, but
it's
never
much
boring.
more difficult to be on a 5-month shoot with someone who, quote-unquote, knows what they're doing and has been doing it for 20 years and is trying to sort of force you to do it that way.
Yeah.
The great thing about working with Zach was we're shooting it in 25 days. There's no second-guessing yourself. We can't sit around and figure out 20 different great ideas. We just go with the first one, and we're on to the next one.
Yeah, and from what I read, you were enormously collaborative in terms of soliciting from them.
Yeah, well, when I first met them, I said, first of all, you're not going to find a more actor-friendly director than me, because I've been directed by a lot of people that I didn't like. I've been directed by a lot of great people, too. But I know, as an actor, what I appreciate, and I want to give that to you guys. So I said, I promise you, we will never move on from a scene until you felt like you've done what you wanted to do, and I think I held to that. And anytime they wanted, we didn't have too much time for improvising just because we were shooting the movie in 25 days, but I encouraged them, if a line didn't feel right, to make it their own.
Have you been watching directors for a while? I mean, you worked early in your life with Woody Allen.
Yeah, I was one of those people who was lucky enough to know, I knew what I wanted to do from a very young age, so,
Direct, not act.
Yeah, really, really direct. I was lucky enough to start getting parts as an actor, but I just looked at it as an opportunity to continue film school. Even when I'm on Scrubs, we have a different director every week. So for me, it's like film grad school in a way. I watch all these different directors and their styles, and I've learned a lot.
What was it about your character that made it interesting for you?
I think just that she's completely unreserved. She just sort of
she's there.
Lets it all go, and that's fun and challenging because it's hard to get out of your inhibitions and let people see all all your weirdnesses and quirks and all of that. So it was
You
fun.
mean all that you feel as a human being?
Yeah, because
Just to
I
let
think
it
you
go
know
and-
it's sort of like an adolescent thing to smooth over your rough edges and try and be as much like everyone else as you can be. And then as you grow up and you're trying to be an adult, then you're like, wait, how am I different from everyone else? And it's that transition that she sort of doesn't go through. She's just doesn't know how to be anything else except her own crazy self.
There is some conventional wisdom that someone who has an early career like you did, even though you went on to Harvard and got a degree in psychology and all the stuff that you have done, that they lose something in terms of innocence. Do you believe that's true or not true? Or did you think that some great childhood experiences or teenage experiences or young adult experiences were not there for you because you were working all the time?
See, I think the challenge is more to get out of your innocence, to get out of your sort of childishness, because being an actor, you're sort of allowed to be a child. You're playing all these different parts.
Yeah.
You're pretending to be other people, which is what kids do. They try on different things, see how they work out. Everyone's taking care of you, doing things for you. So it's harder to become an adult, and you're not around your peers experiencing everything. But I was lucky enough to be in school with friends and hanging out, and then working in the summers, so that I feel like I had a pretty regular growing up experience that I was, pretty. I'm really grateful
Normal.
for. I mean,
As much as
whatever
normal.
normal.
Yeah, whatever normal is, exactly. Now, whether we want to be normal, roll tape. Here's a scene. This is a scene in where Andrew and Sam accompany Mark to the store. Roll tape.
Why are you buying knives? I don't need knives.
I'd like to return these.
You got a receipt?
Actually, no, they're a gift.
Yeah. We should mention the fact that, how did you sell Danny DeVito and Jersey Films on doing this?
It came into their company through a woman named Pam Abdi, who really became one of the main producers on the film. And she was a very precocious 28-year-old president of production of Jersey Films, who coincidentally had grown up in New Jersey. And she just got it. She really understood it better than really anyone that I had submitted it to had. And she called me and said, come in, I want you to meet all my bosses. And I met them one by one, and they really liked it too.
When did you change the name?
I changed it from Large as Arc because people they didn't know what I was saying.
Yeah, right.
And
arc is sort of a highfalutin sound having to do with an actor's arc. Or,
I had lots of different interpretations for why it was a great title, and I still like it. But unless you've seen the film, I think you're really confused, and I just didn't think that it was good to have a title that was confusing to say. So.
Yeah. Having finished the film and having done all the awards at Sundance and all that you've received, having done that, is it the film you wanted to make?
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, I had a great experience working with both studios. They gave me final cut on the movie, which as a first-time director is pretty amazing. It's completely the film that I wanted to make.
Yeah. Did you change your character from what you saw in the script to what this character becomes? A bit?
I think that the character was really specifically written, so I had a really good idea of who she was, I think, in the beginning. So I would say it's pretty faithful to what I read, but I mean, obviously it was my concept. What you read is your interpretation of what you read, so.
It was 10 times better than I imagined it
Is
was.
that right?
No, it was very
It's what a
exciting.
director's looking for, somebody who will surprise him.
Well, it's I note as a first-time director, you don't when you get these amazing actors, they don't audition for you because you offer them the parts. And I know they're amazing actors, but I haven't, without having them seeing them audition, I never know what they're going to do until they show up. And it was just so exciting, one by one, each of their first days, to be like, oh wow, that's how I see the choices they're making. It was very, very cool.
Of all the comparisons, which ones do you like most in terms of other films that have been made?
Citizen Kane, no.
I don't think so.
No, I don't know.
No,
man.
like The Graduate and all of that.
I think the one of my favorite movie, my favorite two movies, if I had to pick, would probably be Harold and Maude and Annie Hall. So if those are my inspirations. Those are the people I aspired to be like. So
Because
they in the 70s, I think Hal Ashby and Woody Allen, for me, created a language of character and dialogue. More important than even story. And just for me, it was like, wow, if you create really interesting characters, I can watch them sit in a room and talk for 2 hours. I'm interested in people and how they talk to each other.
What movies influenced you, Peter?
Movies in general. You know,
was there Harold and Maude for you? Was there?
You know, this movie I always thought of being in the vein. You know, when I first read it, of being in the vein of like Breaking Away or My Bodyguard or those kind of movies from when I was a kid. To me, you know, Harold and Maude was before me. I watched it on video, so when I watched it, I was impressed by it, but it didn't hit me in the same way that, you know, when I was a kid, those were the movies that were coming out. I mean, him saying, you know, talking Italian on his bicycle, and, you know, the motorcycle and My Bodyguard, and just sort of like the dramas that happen in the lives of like everyday people in their 20s, and, you know,
how about you?
Sweet.
I saw this movie as sort of like Reality Bites, almost sort of just like a generational, you know, thing about young
coming
people,
of age, generational,
all in different places in their lives with, you know, largely, you know, soundtrack
did
atmosphere.
Did it resonate with you in terms of? I mean, I know people like this. These are. I feel
script.
like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The script is.
It's the recognition factor that makes it attractive.
Yeah, there's so many things in it about, you know, trying to find your place in the world, trying to find like this unique place that the role you're going to fill that's going to change the world, which is this like, you know, naive, idealistic thing, but yet that we all are aspiring to, and that sort of sense of affluence in the suburbs and sort of not knowing what to do with it, ending up staying at home and smoking pot and living in your, you know, in your riches, you know, like some of the characters in the film. I mean, you just see a lot of them from New York suburbs as well, so it's definitely accurate.
Yeah. Are your parents? Is one of your parents a psychologist?
No. My dad. Your parents.
Your mother is a psychologist.
My mother's a psychologist. My stepfather's a psychologist. My stepmother is a therapist, and my father is a lawyer who sometimes likes to pretend to be a
litigator to therapist, you've got it covered, huh? In terms of dialogue.
Yeah, well, I learned. I mean, therapy was always around. You know, my parents used to see patients in the house. So as a very young kid, it was you know, I learned a lot.
One more scene here. This is where you introduce Sam to a friend of yours from high school who is now a millionaire. Roll tape.
One day.
Let me just talk a little bit about where's your character going in this.
I don't think he knows.
Yeah,
I think
and that's the story.
Yeah, I mean, he's just home.
He's come home and
he feels like obligated to spend about 4 days at home, but he doesn't really know. And that was, you know, I wanted the film to have a feeling, the same feeling that I do when I go home. So there's no real structure to it. I go here, and then I decide to go with my friends, and then I stay over on a buddy's couch, and then I realize I got to go run an errand. Just sort of the circuitous way that I traveled through, you know, suburbia when I go home.
Was this harder than you imagined, or easier because all of a sudden you had this convergence of these great characters? Your father was played by Ian Holm, and
it was harder. I mean, I don't think
harder.
I don't think you can never really prepare yourself for taking on. I mean, whatever you tell yourself in your head, it's going to be like. It's more difficult. I mean, the working with the actors was by far the most fun part, but it's just putting together a film and having it all happen was a much bigger task than I ever imagined.
Would you want to do this? Make a movie? Direct
sure.
a film?
If I ever felt focused enough. I'm going to need a few more years of growing up. No. You need so much concentration, and the period of a film, acting in a film, is sort of perfect for my attention span of 3 months of, you know, really focusing, and then you can sort of drift off. But I can see myself maybe working towards that. It would be exciting.
Peter, you once said this. You said, if you play a villain and try to humanize him, everyone congratulates you for making him more human. But if you play the hero and try to humanize him, try to make him a little less perfect, people get uncomfortable.
It's very true.
You got to go against the grain of expectation.
That's why I've played so many. You know, I know that you get so much freedom playing a role that on the page is someone that we're supposed to despise anyway.
Yeah.
It almost makes it scarier, I guess, if it seems more human. But you know, I think studio executives get a little worried if you're playing a character that, for instance, lies to his girlfriend in a scene or something like that. You know, something as benign as that. They're afraid that now 20% of the people are going to, 20% of the people are going to not like you, and then there won't be as many asses in seats.
Congratulations.
Thank you
really
so much.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Natalie. Good to see you.